There is something you do right before you fall asleep. You do not always notice it, but there is a moment just before your eyes close when your hand loosens its grip on whatever you have been holding all day. The phone, the worry, the question you cannot stop carrying. Your hand opens, and for just a second before the weight returns in the morning, there is nothing to hold. Chosen one. That moment, that half second of release, is the closest this life has ever come to telling you the truth about yourself. Because here is the contradiction that has been living quietly underneath your life for years. The thing you know most certainly with every fiber of your soul is the thing most people spend their entire lives refusing to face. That this is not all there is. That you were made for something that does not end. And yet, the world you live in, with its measurements and its noise and its relentless definitions of what matters, treats this temporary moment as if it were the entire story. Chosen one. We have been reading this life with the wrong chapter heading. This is not the main event. This is the prologue. And the question that matters, the one the next minutes are going to answer, is not where you are going. It is who you already are. Imagine a letter. It was written before you were born, sealed before your name was announced to this world. It has been waiting, held in the hands of the one who knows you completely, for the day you are finally ready to hear what it says. Most people live their entire lives without knowing the letter exists. They navigate by what the world tells them. Their title, their failures, their history, their net worth, the opinions of people who will never truly know them. They never become quiet enough to receive what has always been prepared. But not you, not today. Today, that letter is beginning to open. So let me ask you the question that eternity has already answered, even though you may not yet have heard the answer spoken plainly. If everything you know about yourself, your name, your story, your season, your sense of how far you have come or how far you still have to go, if all of it was being interpreted by something far larger than this world, would it look the same as it does right now? Or would it look completely different? Hold that question, because in the next minutes, through 7 truths that the Bible has always held, but the world has rarely slowed down enough to speak plainly, everything you have assumed about who you are is about to shift. Not because your circumstances change, because your context does. Before we go to the truths, before we speak of eternity and identity and what has already been written about you, I need to acknowledge something first. Because you have been carrying something, you have been showing up day after day in a life that does not always seem to notice you. You work, you give, you pray, you believe. And yet there are moments, sometimes the most ordinary moments, not the dramatic ones, when the gap between who you know yourself to be and how this world sees you feels so wide it is hard to breathe. Chosen one. That gap is real. The weight of it is real. I am not going to skip past it today, because before any truth means anything, you need to know that the one speaking it has already seen exactly where you are standing. And he is not in a hurry. Maybe it was a photograph, something you came across by accident, tucked in a drawer you had not opened in years. And for a moment, you held it in your hand. You thought about how much had changed, how much had faded, how the things that once felt so permanent, so significant, had grown smaller and more distant with time. And underneath all of that, almost too quiet to name, to a question: what actually lasts? If so much can fade this quickly, what is the thing that remains? Chosen one, that is not a small question. That is the question. And the 7 truths we are about to walk through together were written across centuries of scripture and a lifetime of scholarship for exactly that question. What if the reason this life has never fully satisfied you, the reason there has always been a restlessness beneath even your best seasons, is not because something is wrong with you? What if the reason is simply this: You are a being of eternity, living inside of time. A soul designed for permanence, temporarily housed in the impermanent. What if the longing is not the problem? What if it is the compass? What you have always known quietly, in the deepest part of you, in the place beneath the performance, is that you were made for more. Not more success, not more comfort. More real, more permanent, more true. Today, chosen one, we find out exactly what that means through 7 truths from the oldest text in the world and from a scholar who spent his entire life standing at the intersection of reason and the eternal. Truth number 1. Your body is not your true self. Say that slowly. Let it settle. Your body, with its limitations, its age, its tiredness, its history of disappointment, is not who you are. The Apostle Paul wrote it plainly in 2 Corinthians chapter 5. We know that if the earthly tent we live in is destroyed, we have a building from God, an eternal house in heaven, not built by human hand, an earthly tent. That is how Scripture describes the body, not as your identity, but as your temporary dwelling. You are not your tired body, chosen one. You are not your diagnosis. You are not the version of yourself that looks back from the mirror on your hardest morning. You are the soul inside, the one that recognizes truth, that feels love, that aches for God, that carries the permanent imprint of eternity within it. That soul is the real you, and it was never made to be contained here. Think about what your soul can carry that your body cannot. Your body tires, your soul persists. Your body forgets. Your soul remembers the things that truly matter. Your body is marked by every difficult year, every season of strange shows on it eventually. But your soul, the one that was breathed into you by God Himself, carries something that the years cannot reach. There is a version of you that this world has never fully seen, not because you have hidden it, because this world does not have the capacity to hold it. The complete expression of who you are, the one eternity was designed to receive, is larger than what this temporary frame can contain. This is not delay. This is not failure. This is the nature of a soul made for more than one world. That is truth number 1. If that truth is landing in your spirit right now, if something inside you is recognizing itself in those words, type this in the comments right now. I believe it. Not as a performance, not for the algorithm, as a declaration to heaven, because what you speak in faith, even in a small box on a screen, is heard by the one who wrote your name before the world had a name. Truth number 2. But before the truth, we need to address a misunderstanding that many of us were handed a long time ago. Most of us were taught to think of heaven as a reward. Behave well enough, believe the right things, do enough good, survive this life with your faith mostly intact, and then as a kind of divine prize at the finish line, you get to enter something better. But that is not what the Scripture describes, and it is not what the deepest Christian thinkers have said. Heaven is not a reward for the right performance. It is a restoration of the right person, the person you were always supposed to be. Before the world got its hands on you, before the disappointments, before the years of being told you were too much or not enough, there is a version of you that has been preserved in the purposes of God. And heaven is where you finally meet it in full. And K. Lewis, the Oxford professor, who spent the first half of his life as a committed atheist before faith, overtook his reason, understood this misunderstanding better than almost any writer of the 20th century. And in what many scholars consider his greatest single essay, a lecture he delivered at Oxford in 1941 called The Weight of Glory, he wrote something that has stopped readers cold for generations. He wrote, "We are half-hearted creatures, fooling about with drink and sex and ambition, when infinite joy is offered us like an ignorant child who wants to go on making mud pies in a slum because he cannot imagine what is meant by the offer of a holiday at the sea. We are far too easily pleased. Read those words again. Far too easily pleased. We have settled for the mud pies of this world's definitions of worth, its approval, its success, its temporary satisfactions, when something of a magnitude we cannot yet fully imagine has been prepared for us. Chosen One Lewis is not rebuking you. He is reminding you of the size of what you were made for. Heaven is not the consolation prize at the end of a hard life. It is the arrival finally at the full expression of what God designed you to be. The holiday at the sea, not mud pies. Do not let this world convince you the mud pies are the best it gets. And so here is truth number 2, chosen one. Heaven is not unfamiliar. It is the most familiar experience you have never yet had. In Revelation chapter 21, from the throne of God, these words are spoken. I am making everything new. Not something new, everything new, which means even you. The parts of you that have grown tired, that have been worn down, that carry the markings of every season you thought you might not survive, made new, restored to what you were always supposed to be. There is a kind of homecoming that does not look like arriving somewhere foreign. It looks like walking back into the room you were always meant to live in and feeling it in your body before your mind even processes what is happening. This is where I belong. This is the version of me that was written before all the other versions were imposed on me. This is home. That is where you are going, chosen one. Not somewhere unfamiliar. Home. If something in you is rising right now, a recognition, a warmth, a quiet expansion in your chest that you cannot quite explain, that is your soul remembering something it has always known. Type this in the comments. I am more than this. More than this season. More than this title. More than what this world has spent years calling you. More than the version of yourself that circumstances have been trying to define. Speak it into existence, chosen one. Heaven already agrees. Truth number 3. Take a breath before you receive this one, because somewhere along the way, in one of the chapters of your story, you do not often revisit. Most of us learned that being fully seen is dangerous. You showed someone the real version of yourself, the unguarded one, the one that exists beneath the performance and the management and the competence. And it did not go the way you hoped. So you learned to present a version, carefully constructed, competent enough to earn respect, controlled enough never to be truly known, and you have carried that careful management for so long that sometimes in the quiet moments you have forgotten what the unmanaged version even feels like. Chosen one. What if I told you that the thing you are most afraid of, being completely, unguardedly, fully seen, is exactly what eternity promises, and that in eternity, being fully seen does not lead to rejection, it leads to the fullest love you have ever known. Paul wrote it in 1 Corinthians chapter 13. For now, we see only a reflection as in a mirror, but then we shall see face to face. Now I know in part, but then I shall know fully, even as I am fully known, face to face. Not through the protective glass of the version you have learned to present, not filtered through your best self or your managed self or the self you show when you are trying to earn something. Face to face, the complete version of you. Every corner that has known shame, every hidden fear that has never been spoken to another person, every doubt you have carried alone in the dark, fully seen, fully known, and loved without exception, without hesitation, without the slightest flinch. That is truth number 3, chosen one. In eternity, you will be completely known and completely loved at the exact same moment. The thing you have been most afraid of your entire life is actually the safest experience that exists. Do you remember that letter? The one that has been waiting since before you were born, sealed before your name was announced to this world. Imagine that today, in the light of truth number 3, someone has finally opened it just slightly. Not all the way, not yet, just enough to read the first few lines. And they do not begin with a list. They do not begin with your accomplishments or your failures or the chapters that make you proud or the ones you wish you could rewrite. They begin with your name, not the name the world gave you, the name that was written before the world had the chance to misname you. And beside that name right there on the first line, 2 words, fully known, chosen one. You were never a mystery to the one who wrote it, not for a single day of your life. Truth number 4. And I need to be careful here, because this one touches something real. There is suffering in your story that has no clean explanation. There are things you have walked through, losses, betrayals, collapses, that arrived without warning, where no one handed you a satisfying answer to the question of why, where you prayed for understanding and received silence, where you looked for a lesson and could only find a wound. I am not going to stand here today and tell you that everything happens for a reason, as though those 6 words are sufficient to hold what you have actually carried. Because sometimes the weight is so significant, so real, so specific, so deeply personal, that only eternity is large enough to contain it. And that is exactly where we are going. C.S. Lewis was not a man who spoke about suffering from a safe distance. He had seen war. He had buried friends. He had watched the woman he loved, his wife Joy, die slowly from cancer. He had prayed in the middle of a grief so profound that he described the experience in a small, raw journal he later published under the title A Grief Observed. And yet after all of that, in one of his most searching works, The Great Divorce, Lewis arrived at something that sounds almost impossible until you hold it in the light of eternity. He wrote, "They say of some temporal suffering, no future bliss can make up for it, not knowing that heaven, once attained, will work backwards and turn even that agony into a glory." Read that slowly. Heaven will work backwards, not just forward into a better future, backwards into the chapters that already happened, reaching into every painful moment of your past, every wound, every night of prayer that felt unanswered, every loss that left a shape in you, and transforming not just what comes next, but the meaning of what has already been. Chosen one, what Lewis is saying is this: the suffering was real, the weight was real, but there is coming a day, in the full clarity of eternity, when you will understand exactly what it was for, not in a way that makes it hurt less, in a way that makes it mean infinitely more than you could have imagined from here. Paul wrote it in Romans chapter 8. I consider that our present sufferings are not worth comparing with the glory that will be revealed in us. Not that the suffering was not real, not that it did not cost you what it cost you, but that the glory, the full, unobstructed revelation of what God has prepared for those who love Him, is so far beyond what this language can carry, that when you see it, the comparison will not hold. Truth number 4, chosen one. The suffering you have carried in this life will be understood in eternity with a clarity and a meaning that this world is not capable of giving you. Nothing will be wasted, not one tear, not one prayer that felt unanswered, not one night when you held on by what felt like the thinnest possible thread of faith. Every single one of those moments was held by the one who holds eternity itself. And in His hands, nothing that was real is ever discarded. If you are carrying something right now that has felt meaningless, if there is a wound in your story that has never received an adequate explanation, type this in the comments. I will not forget. Not forget that you held on when holding on was hard, Not forget that even in the pain, even in the seasons when nothing seemed to move, you kept showing up. Not forget that the God who holds eternity has been holding your specific suffering in His specific hands. This entire time, type it, chosen one. I will not forget. Heaven is marking this moment. Truth number 5. Let me ask you an honest question. Have you ever felt like God was moving too slowly? Not in a crisis, not in a dramatic emergency where the urgency is obvious, but in the accumulation of ordinary days. The days that look the same. The days where you pray the same prayer, with the same faith and receive the same silence. And as the days stack into weeks and the weeks into months, there are moments where even the most faithful heart begins to wonder, not about God's existence, about His interest, about whether your particular situation, your specific name, your specific need has somehow slipped through the grid of His attention. Chosen one. I need to tell you something about time, and specifically about the difference between how time feels from here and what time looks like from there. Peter wrote it in his second letter, chapter 3. With the Lord, a day is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years are like a day. The Lord is not slow in keeping His promise, as some understand slowness. Not slow, not behind, not distracted, operating on a framework of time that this life bound to minutes and months and the relentless forward movement of clocks cannot fully perceive. Truth number 5, chosen one. What feels like delay on earth looks like absolute precision from eternity. Imagine standing in a dark room, looking at a single thread of a tapestry, but only through a keyhole. The thread looks random, disconnected, going nowhere in particular. But the full tapestry, the one that God can see from above in its entirety, is the most breathtaking design you have ever witnessed. And every thread, including the thread that is your life right now, in this season, in this moment, is placed with deliberate, intentional care, not by accident, by design. This is not delay. This is precision. Something changes when you understand that. Not immediately, not dramatically, but quietly, in the way that deep things shift rather than shout. The urgency begins to soften. The fist that has been clenched around the timeline unclenches. The breath that has been held waiting for something to move deepens. Not because the waiting ended, because the meaning changed. You are not a forgotten person standing in a line that never moves. You are a prepared person, standing precisely where this season of preparation requires you to stand. And the God who holds eternity in His hands is not watching the clock with anxiety. He is not calculating whether there is still time. He is moving with absolute confidence, absolute love, absolute precision toward the moment He has already seen in full. The moment your story makes perfect sense. So breathe, chosen one. Not because it is finished, because it is in better hands than you have been giving yourself credit for realizing. Truth number 6, and this one I have been saving for this particular moment, because it actually began at the very start of our time together today. Do you remember? That moment when your hand opened before sleep? When you were just a person, not a title, not a role, not what you produce or what you manage or what you are responsible for, just a person in the quiet, holding nothing. I want to ask you something in that moment. What name do you go by when no one is around? Not the name on your office door, not the name people call when they need something from you. The name you carry in the quiet, the one that has felt at times too ordinary, too common, too unremarkable for the size of the calling you have always sensed stirring inside of you. Chosen one. That name, that ordinary feeling name, has a history you were never fully told. E.S. Lewis, in what became one of the most widely read works of Christian philosophy of the 20th century, Mere Christianity, wrote something that a generation of readers has carried with them ever since. He wrote, "You don't have a soul. You are a soul. You have a body." Read that again. You do not have a soul. You are a soul. You have a body. You are not a physical creature that happens to contain a spiritual component. You are an eternal soul, authored by God, known in heaven, existing before this world fully understood what to do with you that is temporarily housed in a physical body. The body was assigned at birth. The soul was authored before birth, before the hospital, before the name on the birth certificate, before any of the defining moments of this life had a chance to reach you. And if the soul is who you truly are, if the name written in eternity's record belongs to the soul, not the circumstances, then who you are is not defined by what this life has handed you. It is defined by what God wrote quietly, permanently, lovingly before this life began. Paul wrote it in Ephesians chapter 1. He chose us in Him before the creation of the world to be holy and blameless in His sight. In love, He predestined us for adoption to sonship through Jesus Christ. Before the creation of the world, before the universe had a name to call itself, before the stars were arranged, before the first breath of anything that has ever breathed, you were already chosen, already known, already loved. And that name that has felt too ordinary for the size of what you carry, that name that has moved through seasons of being overlooked, underestimated, passed over, that name was not randomly assigned. It was confirmed. It was placed carefully, intentionally, lovingly on a soul that had already been seen, already selected, already written into the eternal purposes of God before time had a beginning. Truth number 6, chosen one. Your identity in eternity was not earned by anything you have done in this life. It was written before you took your first breath. You did not become someone worth knowing. You have always been, and heaven has known it the entire time. This is the moment, chosen one, not someday, right now. Your name, the one that has felt too quiet, too ordinary, too overshadowed by names that seem to occupy the spaces you were meant for. That name is written in eternity. Type it in the comments right now. My name is known, not by this world, by the one who created the world. Your name is known. It has always been known, from before the world began. Let that land. Let it really land. Truth number 7, the last one, and I want to begin it with a question you may have never had the exact words for. Have you ever felt, in the middle of a perfectly good moment, a longing for something you could not name? Not sadness, exactly. Not dissatisfaction, something more like an ache, a reaching towards something just beyond the edge of what you can see or touch or hold in this life. You are in a beautiful place, surrounded by people you love, in a moment that by every measurement should feel complete. And yet underneath the beauty, there it is, that quiet pull, that unnamed, reaching towards something you cannot quite see. C.S. Lewis had a word for this, a German word, Sehnsucht, a deep, inconsolable longing, a kind of homesickness for a place you have never been and yet somehow know. And Lewis did not treat this as a problem to be solved. He treated it as evidence. Evidence that the soul knows at a level beneath language that it belongs somewhere beyond this world and has been quietly, persistently reaching toward it all along. Jesus prayed it in John chapter 17, in the final hours before his crucifixion, in what may be the most intimate and private prayer recorded in all of Scripture. Father, I want those you have given me to be with me where I am and to see my glory. He wants you with him, not in a general, collective sense. He prayed specifically for those who belong to him to be in the exact place where he is, to see what he sees, to be where he is, to be home. Truth number 7, chosen one. Eternity is not a destination you are traveling toward. It is a home you are returning to. And now the letter, the one that was sealed before you were born, the one that opened slightly when you were named, fully known in Truth 3. Today, in the light of everything you have received, it opens completely. And what it says is this: you were not born into this world as a stranger, arriving at something foreign. You were sent from the place of your truest belonging into a temporary assignment. And the longing you have carried your entire life, that unnamed ache, that quiet reaching towards something beyond the edges of this world, is your soul recognizing the direction of home? You are not wandering. You are not lost. You are not behind. You are returning. And the one who sent you has been preparing the welcome the entire time. Chosen one. Open your hands right now, not metaphorically. Actually, let them rest open in your lap, because what I am about to ask you to receive is not something you earn, not something you achieve, not something that arrives after a sufficient amount of spiritual performance. It is something you simply, openly, quietly, with empty hands, accept. Type this in the comments. I receive it. The identity that was written before you were born, the name that eternity has always known, the home that is already being prepared, the welcome that has been in preparation since before you took your first breath. Receive it, chosen one. Not because you have earned it, because you were designed for it. I receive it. Type it. Let heaven witness your yes. We began today with a question that eternity already had the answer to, even if you had not yet heard it spoken plainly. Who are you really? When the world goes quiet, when the performance stops, when the hand opens and there is nothing left to hold, who are you in that half second before sleep? Today, through 7 truths that Scripture has never hidden, but the world has rarely slowed down long enough to receive, you have been given the answer. You are not your body. You are not your season. You are not the accumulation of your history. You are not the version of yourself that this world has spent years trying to name and contain and define. You are an eternal soul, chosen before creation, known before birth, named in heaven, and on your way home. That is the answer. Not as a comfort to survive another hard week, as the truth that changes how you walk through every week from this moment forward. Chosen one. You are not an afterthought. You were not placed in this story by accident and then left to figure it out alone. You were designed, you were prepared, you were named. And eternity, with all of its fullness, all of its permanence, all of the glory that Lewis said we are far too easily pleased to even begin to imagine, eternity was built with a place for you in it, not a generic place, not a row among rows of identical seats. A specific, prepared, personal place. The place where the fullest version of you, the one that never fully fit inside this life, meets the fullness of the God who designed you. And the ache of sehnsucht, that inconsolable, unnamed longing you have carried since you can remember, finally resolves into the recognition of, this is where I was always supposed to be. This is who I actually am. This is home. I am not arriving here. I am returning. One last thing before I go. Type this in the comments, your final declaration today. I am returning home. Not because the journey has become easy, not because everything is resolved, because the destination is certain, and the one who is waiting at the door, the one who prayed for you by name in John 17, the one who wrote your name before time had a beginning, the one who has held every silent tear in hands that do not lose track of what matters. He sees you on the road right now, and he is not standing still. He is not waiting at the door. He is already walking toward you. You are more than this world has said you are. You always have been, and eternity has known it since before you drew your first breath. Go in the peace of that chosen one. You are known. You are named. You are on your way home.